Moshi Moshi.
Hello.
I'm Zeb Ramsbotham.
And I'm Annie Ramsbotham.
And we're the Rambling Ramsbothams.
Our journey might be rambling, but we hope this podcast isn't.
And today, if you hear anything strange going on in the background, one, it's either me and my sleeping bag, and I'm sorry because it's me rustling my sleeping bag fabric.
Zeb's like sitting in his sleeping bag in this chair.
Yeah, who needs a kotatsu when you have a winter season sleeping bag?
Yeah, that's one way to
It keeps you warm down to like -7 degrees Fahrenheit.
Well, the other thing you might hear outside is a bunch of cars driving in the snow because it snowed a ton suddenly this afternoon. It was supposed to rain, and I guess it did rain. It just was cold enough that it turned into snow.
Yeah, it's really weird that usually the forecast is pretty accurate, and it said it was just going to rain all afternoon. But kind of like last time, it said we were actually going to get a bunch of snow, and it just ended up raining in Ushinada. This time, it said we were going to get rain, and then it started snowing a ton. And at first, I was like, oh, it's really pretty, but like it's not cold enough to stick or anything. And then like an hour later, everything was blanketed, and then it just kept coming. So yeah, we kind of have like a little unexpected snowstorm.
I was walking around outside while I walked to the post office, and it became the winter wonderland out there.
Yeah, it was super snowy, and I kept having like teachers, and there were windows all over the school, so I don't know what they were doing, but they would come into the teacher's room and they'd look out the window and they'd be like, "Yabai!" They'd be like, "There's so much snow," and they'd kind of like freak out because
like they hadn't looked out a window until then.
Yeah, and I guess they were like worried about their cars getting stuck and stuff.
It is funny because so we're on the west coast of Japan, but a lot of people in Tokyo are like kind of, I don't think freaking out is an understatement, but like on Reddit and things, which I know you're not supposed to go on Reddit for accurate information, but people on Reddit are kind of freaking out in Tokyo about snow, which is kind of funny because I would think that the infrastructure there can handle it. So much of it is underground or on trains to get around town. I don't know. Yeah. But everybody on there is like, my work was canceled. Like, I'm going to go home and like, I hope everybody stays safe out there.
Yeah. It's like, hey man, you doing okay?
It's like in America when they tell you to go buy like bread and milk.
Well, they don't tell you to do that. They just say it's going to snow and then everyone goes to buy bread and milk. Yeah. But I feel like people in Tokyo are kind of like that right now. They're like running around buying bread and milk. But I wish that our school, my work got canceled. It does not. You just still go to school and everyone just drives around in the snow. And
we are lucky that you can just walk to school, though.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad I'm not one like my coworkers have to drive there. That'd be a bit of a pain. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so we got a bunch of snow, which has been fun. And then the big thing is we had a couple of emails.
Yeah, we have some listener emails.
Yeah.
So,
which we can start out by saying, just so you know, you can always send us an email, and the email is always linked in the description of the podcast, like episode.
Yeah, the show notes.
Oh, is that what they're called?
I guess.
Oh, okay.
I'm a podcaster now. I know the lingo.
Yeah, in the industry. So
it's
in the show notes,
also on our website. It's ramblingramsbothams@gmail.com.
So just the name of the podcast. You can copy and paste it and then add at gmail.com.
Yeah, and I love getting emails, and we got a very friendly email from Todd. And he let us know that he likes watching the podcast while he rides the trainer. Well, like
hey, Todd.
Yeah, hi. Maybe he watches it on YouTube.
Yeah, for those that don't know, we do upload it to YouTube, and we do always feel bad. Maybe we're not visually exciting people.
Well, it's just this. We're just in a room.
I know. Yeah, and we don't really make eye contact a lot.
Well, this is an auditory medium.
No, I know.
But
yeah.
Thank you, Todd, for watching. And I hope you're doing well on the trainer, if that's what or on the turbo. He's riding like an indoor bike, he says, while he watches. So you can do it. Keep pedaling. It's a very winter time activity. And he also, I think it was Sandy who said first that we should keep the intro. Todd agrees.
And then someone posted on our Spotify Q&A that also said we should keep the intro.
It might have been Diz Dog, but I can't remember. Mm-hmm. But I guess the consensus is that we're keeping the intro. So thank you for the affirmation. I was team intro. So that was it. He just had a very friendly hello from the email, not really a question.
It's very nice.
I did have a question from another listener who happens to be my sister Lucy. Hi, Lucy. So, do you want to read her question?
Yeah, the big gist of it was from the Coming of Age Day episode, and she kind of had a lot of compounding questions, saying if someone is just one day out of the bracket to celebrate, can they still celebrate, or is it a hard cutoff? and has this divided friend groups, grades, and because some are 20 and some are not. And she was curious if the line can be fudged a little.
It's a good question.
Yeah,
she's talking about the coming of age day that we've mentioned a couple times.
Which was maybe the second week in November, or not November, second week in January episode. It's the coming of age day is like January 8th or 9th. It's like the second Monday or something in January.
Sajin no hi was the word.
It's a good one.
Yeah.
But basically, short answer, yes, it's a hard cutoff. Because it's like a cultural thing, and I guess it's like a pretty big deal. It's interesting because now at this current point in time, it's not as big of a deal as it used to be. Because for instance, as of 2023, 18 is now the age of adulthood in Japan. You still can't drink and smoke until you're 20. So 20 still has some cultural significance. But for example, like the ceremony comes from like way, way long ago, like, I don't know, over 1,000 years ago or something, where it was a much bigger deal where turning 20, you really were kind of becoming this grand member of society. And really, I think it was kind of like many things historically around the world, it was kind of like aristocracy celebrated it. I don't think, the common rice peasant was out there like, yes.
Yeah, maybe if you had like a family with a lot of wealth, maybe you got some fun things when you became like a quote adult.
Maybe, yeah.
Now you have to like pay taxes and stuff.
I mean, even then, I guess you would have paid taxes before you turned 20, but it just had more cultural significance back then. So it was more of an actual ceremony, where now it's like a holiday, but not a huge deal. But anyway, there is a hard cutoff, and it's changed a little over the years. So it used to be from ceremony date to ceremony date.
In a school year?
No, that was just ceremony date to ceremony date.
Oh,
so if
coming of age day from the previous year to the next day.
So if you turned 20 between the coming of age days, you would celebrate
the following?
Yeah. But then a lot of systems started using the school year, which is April 2nd of one year to April 1st of the next year. So for example, now it's April 2nd, 2024 to April 1st, 2025. So that's now like the major decider for if you turn 20 during that period, you celebrate coming of age day and you enter adulthood. And they used to try and use, some places have tried to use, for example, Hiroshima and Sapporo tried to use the calendar year. So January 1st to December 31st. And for whatever reason, people really didn't like it.
That's a really big difference, though. Like, if you're using January to December, it's like half of a year. If everybody else is using April to April, it's a pretty big difference. Yeah. Especially if you, like, Sapporo, I mean, they're kind of, like, physically far removed from everyone up in Hokkaido, but Hiroshima, like, what if you're in the next city over and all your friends are, like, 6 months off from you?
And I'm pretty sure it said it was like, literally the city of Hiroshima tried.
I get why that would be confusing.
But yeah, so it's interesting that the dates have kind of shifted around time, but it's a pretty hard cutoff. Like, you couldn't really like fudge your way in there. I think it'd be kind of looked down upon.
But to her secondary question about whether or not that breaks up friend groups, I don't think that it would. I think it would be just as frustrating as, like, for example, I remember, so any listeners who are not from America, the drinking age in America is 21. It's pretty old, I think, and also you're over halfway through college before you can legally drink, which is like fine, except that many of your friends will be able to drink and go into bars before you can. So there's this really awkward period during junior year of college where some people can go into bars, some people can't. And I remember it being really frustrating because, like, for example, we started dating and I wasn't 21 yet. And so sometimes, like, I would get off work when I was a waitress and we would want to meet up with friends in the bar across the street, but they start carding after 10 p.m. And I was like, sorry, I can't go to that bar with you guys.
Too young.
Yeah, it was just like certain annoying things like that. Or you would all get together with friends and you'd be like, oh, let's go. Like, this place is having a band play. And then you'd realize somebody in your friend group isn't 21 yet, so you can't all go.
Just gotta leave them behind.
So, like, no, it doesn't break up a friend group, but it does create some tension. So maybe it's the same thing where it's kind of like, oh, that's a bummer that this one person in our friend group can't dress up and celebrate with us, but I don't think it really breaks people apart.
I don't think so. I think, especially not coming of age day itself, I think coming of age day is a like byproduct of a culture that is very into age and hierarchies. So coming of age day itself doesn't really do anything, but I think Japanese culture as a whole does quite a bit. And I think that this is definitely more traditional and maybe more antiquated. Like, I don't think it's as serious as it used to be. But it used to be like pretty serious that, you know, people would even say, even if there was like a year's age gap, sometimes that means that you would always speak to each other in more
using,
formal
like,
or
Keigo
informal.
speech.
Yeah, you would like change your language based
Yeah.
and I think now like culturally it's more accepted to like, it's not as big of a deal. But I have heard that in some companies, it's still like a really big deal. Like, you're senior in the company. If someone's been there for 3 years longer than you, then it's a big deal. And they will, of course, always be your senior in the company. And this is actually like a big trope in a lot of anime and manga. But sometimes it get not confusing as an American, but you'll see in anime or manga, there will be, you know, this like powerhouse. There's like the hierarchy of characters. And they're like, oh, but he's like an upper whatever, and then he's a lower, and that
like
really
senpai and what's the younger one?
It comes from the language of like upper seat and lower seat, which is also very common, and it's because in a business you would seat yourself based on hierarchy, which essentially is like age within the company, and so the lower seat sits closest to the door, and then as you go up in hierarchy it goes up. So
it's like at an izakaya. Like, the honorable guest sits farthest away from the door.
Yeah, so the honorable guest gets like the big seat, and then next to the honorable guest is usually like the boss of the company, and then it rotates through the hierarchy to like the lower seat, which is like the young person who like just joined the company, and they handle all the, like the ordering and talking to the wait staff. That itself too, like it seems also maybe kind of antiquated. I don't know if many
it's probably
companies
just more formal, like in a business setting. Do you remember when before you stopped drinking and we would go to that bar occasionally that had Belgian beers in Kanazawa, we were there with your coworker and his friends from school or something, and they were referring to each other with like senpai.
Yeah, so they had an even more interesting dynamic, which is also wrapped up in this age thing, and it's senpai kohai. So senpai is like your elder, your like honorable elder, and then kohai is like the younger, like.
But they don't even have to be old, like old elder. They could be just a couple years older.
Yeah, or even just like a year gap. Like if you're like a junior in college,
like
and then
upperclassmen.
There's a freshman. Yeah, then it's like senpai kohai, which that apparently that's kind of like an Asian wide. It comes from the Confucianism, or Confucius had this family hierarchy, and many Asian countries adopted that, and Japan, of course, is one of those. And they kind of established this family system, and it even dates back to historically, like the head of the household truly was the head of the household. Like the eldest man, so the father of the family, could apparently kind of like order the family around, and it was like legally binding. Like if the head of the household told you something, then you had to do it. And this was a family system, but it was abolished in 1947 after World War II. So that's no longer like, that's kind of like archaic.
What's like the archaic word for husband? Not archaic, but like kind of a older word for husband is shujin, which literally means master. And sometimes people will still use it, but it's a little more like intense. It's kind of like if I called you shujin, people would be like, dang, he must be like really heavy-handed.
Yeah.
Instead of just being like, oh, that's my husband. It's like, oh, that's my master.
I'm just going to start calling you geisha.
I don't think it's the same at all.
No, I don't think it is. But yeah, it's definitely, there's a lot, and this is kind of like a very lengthy explanation of like, I think the coming of age day is like a product of this type of society. It doesn't necessarily split things. Like there are so many other things that split up. And it's not even split up friend groups. It's just kind of like your friend group kind of is, and I've mentioned it before kind of with the school. And this is like an example, like you do everything together in your homeroom. So it seems like most of my students, their friends are in their homeroom, and that's like their unit. And for example, I don't think that it's as strict as it used to be, because there was a third year student that when last year I asked him like, oh, what are you excited about being a third year student? And he said that he was excited to meet like new students. So he meant like the incoming, first year students. And, like a week or two later, I saw him hanging out with a bunch of first year girls. So like, he got what he was looking for. But so it doesn't seem,
like as strict.
Yeah, it's not like you shun people who are younger than you.
No.
But there is kind of this established thing. And it's so established, it's even in language. Like, and we've mentioned this before too, with the words like anata, which is like you, versus kimi, which is also you. But like a senpai could say kimi to a kohai, which is not like demeaning, but it's kind of like
it's more casual.
It's a very casual you, where the kohai would probably
you would never use it reverse.
Yeah,
probably.
You would be like very nice.
Yeah. And this is all kind of like large generalizations, because another thing I was going to say is that some of my closest friends in Japan are senior to me, like they're older than I am by a bit, and they've never made me feel like diminished, or they've never used words like kimi or talk to me, talk down to me.
They're the same age, right?
They are, yes.
So it'd be interesting to see the dynamic if they were like a difference in their age and then you.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, and obviously
you should just ask them, like, I wonder
Japanese.
if they have younger friends or...
Yeah, I can ask them. It is cute sometimes. They'll give each other, like, other people who are their age, they'll put, like, chan and, like, little cute nicknames at the end of each other's names. But, yeah, I don't think it's that, like, strict or harsh unless you're in a really intense business setting and the boss is, like, kind of like an intense guy who's really by the book. Because respect is such an important thing in Japanese culture. Like, sometimes people say that confidence is the most important thing in American culture, but respect is the most important thing in Japanese culture.
And it's respect, but also like knowing your place in a way. Like you understand your place in the hierarchy.
You want to always like give somebody the opportunity to save face. Like, I remember somebody telling me that one time, you know how sometimes someone will say chotto, like kind of, they'll say maybe when they mean no.
Yeah.
And they pushed them so far that they had to outright say no. And it was really awkward because they were an American and the Japanese person finally had to be like, put their foot down and say no outright. And it kind of hurt their relationship because it made the Japanese person feel like they couldn't save their face kind of a bit. So you always want to like protect dignity and respect in a certain way, in a different kind of... It's more important than it is in American relationships, I think.
Yeah, and then it's also, like a weird, not weird, but maybe trickier topic because very obviously we're foreigners. So this is all kind of like anecdotal, like based on our own like observances or like things we've read. Like clearly we didn't grow up in this culture, so we don't know like how strict is it actually. And so, but it is very interesting, and there's a lot of like literature online, or you can just ask like a Japanese person and maybe they can explain it better. But some of these have been kind of like firsthand, like when I would go to that bar and I would talk to my friend and he would have his friend there who was younger. And
it's just funny to notice certain things that wouldn't happen in an American bar necessarily. Yeah,
because in America, like, it's very... I mean, there's like old, and then there's a gray zone where like everyone's kind of the same age, and then you have like a true like elder. But yeah, that's kind of a little bit about...
Yeah, hopefully that answered your question, Lucy.
Yeah, the complexity of age in Japan.
And if you have anything to add to that or any other personal experiences or other questions, email us, ramblingramsbothams@gmail.com.
Yeah. And now we're going to talk a little bit about clickbait.
Yeah, Zeb's been really fired up about this topic. But it has been coming up a lot more recently. Like, we've been noticing a lot more clickbait videos on like YouTube and things, and it's probably because the algorithm, in air quotes, like knows that we live in Japan now, and so it's feeding us a lot of Japan videos. But I've been seeing a lot of videos that are like, this like most or best or oldest or craziest thing in Japan.
And I think that a lot of that, we did see it even before we moved to Japan, but it becomes funnier when you're living in a place that is now having those titles applied to it. And look, I understand clickbait is what a content creator does, like, because that's their livelihood, and so they need to make money, so they need to get views.
And it works. It makes you want to click on it.
And we're talking about it. So they, like, sensationalize it. But I do think specifically in the travel like content creator sphere or industry or whatever you want to call it, it's like a huge issue because people are looking for these particular like, experiences, and they want to feel like they're in on the best.
Yeah.
And so they do this thing where like they'll title videos, you know, like it's the best or this is like the worst, and they always do the all caps, like which gets me because it's like, what, like just like right, like normal.
Yeah, but it makes you click.
Well, I don't click out of spite.
Oh.
Like some of these videos I feel bad because I could talk about them, and recently we have seen a lot. Like I saw like one and it was like the snowiest, and then the best, and like the least, and it's like all these things, and I didn't click on it out of spite because I was like, you know what, like I'm not giving in.
Just a Japan problem, and it's across all, like it's not just a YouTube thing, but
No.
It is interesting just to see it with travel because there are so many things about Japan that I want to tell people, like, oh, this place gets a lot of beautiful snow, but then if you title it like this is the snowiest, craziest place, then it's a little like, oh, okay, well, hold on, like why can't it just be a beautiful place that gets a lot of snow?
Yeah.
Or a quaint village in Japan, not the hidden village in Japan,
or a
untouched
place that's
by
like,
modern times.
yeah, this is like the least visited like place in Japan. And it's kind of like, well, like, is it? And so that's why it's like interesting, especially like when you were having coffee with your friends and one of them brought up one of the videos, and they have like an interesting perspective because, well, this is where they grew up and this is where they live, and now all of a sudden there's this like foreign person that comes in and like titles a video a certain way and then gets like tons of views, and then I'm sure like your friends, they speak English pretty well, like they can read the comments and they can probably see like what people are saying about like, oh, like such a hidden gem and like an absolute like beautiful like and like yada yada, which I'm sure like can make them feel good, but then also it is kind of like we're not like in the sticks out here. Like this is like an advanced developed city.
Hidden. Like Kanazawa is a moderately large city. Like no city is going to be as popular as Tokyo, Osaka, Kyoto, but there's tons of mid-range cities that are really popular within internal tourism, or what do you call it, where Japanese people are visiting places in Japan? I think
just internal tourism, which is
so
huge in Japan.
It's a huge market.
And so when you say least visited, like I guess you mean by foreigners.
I guess, but even then, that's not true. Like, if you want to go to, like, the least visited city.
I have some statistics that I can talk about. But real quick, I just wanted to mention that I think this is, like, a greater problem within... I mean, I guess you can get, like, off the deep end and get existential and say it's, like, a societal issue. Because I really think it's the same thing hand in hand with, like, social media. It gives you the perspective, oh, well, they didn't title their... Like, Annie's latest video didn't say this was... the best like ice cream in Kanazawa, so it must have been like
just okay,
not that great. And it's kind of like annoying because it does give you like a slippery slope effect where, well, then do I need to say it's the best, or like I didn't say that I had like the greatest day ever, like on our last anniversary I wasn't like this was the best day of my life, and so where people were like, man, maybe things are
I guess we don't want people to come to Japan and be like, I need to check off like the 10 best all-time things in Japan, because I think you'd be disappointed if you looked at it like a checklist. And there's so many great things that are so relative to what you like, or just what the weather is like that day, or whatever. And so, you know, I guess we both are like, well, whatever you get into when you come to Japan, it's probably going to be a good time. So don't stress about, like, seeing the best thing or the prettiest thing or the most, like, air quotes, hidden thing.
Yeah, like everyone, and that's a funny thing, too, with, like, foreigners, when they, specifically, we notice it in Japan because that's where we are. But when you come to a place, like, foreigners really love getting off, like, the beaten track. And sometimes,
I get it. Like,
I get it, but sometimes you'll read a Google
either.
review for a restaurant, and it'll be like, I wandered down this little unknown back street and found the hidden, like, gem of a ramen restaurant in Kanazawa, one of Japan's, like, most immaculate cities. And then you, like, click on it on the map, and it's like they were right next to the station, and it's like, like...
No, I get it, and I don't want to sound too bitter or anything. It's just...
I just think it's nice to have appropriately set expectations, and I think that's why I really like the mundane life stuff, because that is most of what your trip will probably be. And sometimes that's like the coolest
Yeah.
part of the trip is
Get,
just
like, the
kind
most
of
serendipitous random stuff.
yeah. And I feel like if you're looking for the best, you'll walk by really good stuff that was very serendipitous or like very like just good timing, but you'll walk by it because you were looking for the best and you're like, well, I saw on YouTube that this is the greatest. So that's kind of me, I guess, on my like high horse. But I do have some statistics to back a little bit of this up. So for example, Ishikawa, and so we were looking like, well, how many people actually come here?
Yeah, like, is Kanazawa one of Japan's least visited cities, actually?
And it depends on your point of view, but Ishikawa is Japan's 18th most visited prefecture. And this data is from 2019, so pre-pandemic. And then since 2019, the statistics keeping hasn't really gotten back on track or really like gone back. But we can post a link to it, but also if you Google like Japan tourism statistics, there's a governmental website where they post all this information. And I've referenced it before in the podcast. But Ishikawa is Japan's 18th most visited prefecture, and this is by sightseeing and leisure, so not including business trips. And if I'm reading the graph correctly, what they were doing is they were asking people when they were leaving the country, oh, where did you go? And 2.3% of visitors to Japan in 2019 came to Ishikawa. And that doesn't sound like a lot, but it's like an interesting statistic because the top 5 were Osaka with 43.4, Tokyo with 42.4, Kyoto at 38.8 or 32.8.
Hold on, 43, 42, and 32.
Yep.
That's over 100%.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Wait, sorry.
When people left, they said, which prefectures did you go to? So those are the top 3, followed by Chiba with 32.3. And then 5th place was Nara at 14.3.
I'm kind of surprised by that, actually. It's the one with all the deer.
Kinda. And then if you go as far as 6th place, that's Hokkaido at 9.7%. So really, as soon as you get outside of the top 5 most visited places in Japan,
it's below 10%.
Yeah, you're 1 in 10. Is it like 1 in 10 people went there? And so you go all the way down to Ishikawa at 18th most visited. And it's just really interesting that really, if you go anywhere outside of those 5 places I just listed, you'll be one of like 10 people as far as 2019 went.
It would be interesting to know now, like post-COVID, what the tourism statistics are, because I do think tourism skyrocketed after
They have some
COVID, but
data for 2022, and then I think there's like a little bit of 2023 data. But 2022 is like a weird year because it's like they had just opened, so it looks really low.
Yeah.
But it's because they were like half open.
a year.
So it'll be interesting to see 2023 like a full year.
Yeah.
But then, interestingly, if you really want to go to the least visited place in all of Japan, you'll skip right by Kanazawa when the bullet train gets installed, and you'll go to Fukui because
it's the prefecture next to us.
Yeah, Fukushima, Shimane, Fukui, and Kochi prefectures are the bottom 4 prefectures.
Which is unfortunate because there's so much beauty there.
I know.
But it just shows you how much there is to see in Japan.
Yeah, and they all tied with 0.2% of visitors, so not even a full percent. And in fact, there were 19 prefectures that were under 1%.
I mean, none of that surprises me. Like, if I only had 2 weeks in Japan, I wouldn't tell someone not to go to Tokyo and Osaka and Kyoto. Like, they're the top 3 for a reason.
Yeah.
But then also people are like, well, they're so crowded. And it's like, Japan is not crowded, but those 3 places are crowded.
And it gives, like, perspective to, people talking about crowding, because it's like, well, yeah, like, duh. Like, half of the people that come to Japan go there.
Yeah.
Or when people talk about being somewhere like Ishikawa, and they're like, I was like off the beaten track. And
it just feels like that comparatively.
Yeah, comparatively, maybe. Like, sure.
It's hard because, I mean, you shouldn't skip those places. The busy places are important to see.
Yeah, it's like when people complain about they don't want to go to like a touristy place. And it's like, well, it's touristy for a reason because it's some of the coolest stuff around. It's like if you went to Italy and you skipped like Venice and Rome and stuff like that, and then complained about not seeing historical stuff.
Yeah.
I was like, well, you should have gone to the touristy places.
Yeah, but also like Italy's so much more than Venice and
Yeah.
Rome. So same here.
Yeah, and then to put some numbers on that, just in perspective what it looked like. So in 2019, again, there's data from 2022 for this, but it looks weird because of COVID. In 2019, Tokyo had just under 28 million accumulated guests, foreign guests at accommodations. So just under 28 million. Ishikawa had 926,000. And then Kochi Prefecture, which rounds out the bottom, had 80,750. So I guess you could say roughly Ishikawa had 1/28th, and then underneath that, Kochi had a tenth of the people that came to Ishikawa.
It's pretty dramatic.
Yeah, it's like a huge drop off. Yeah, it's just like interesting. It just in relation to things, and I know like you shouldn't be too pedantic and like look up statistics. Like when someone calls something the snowiest, like we could go pull up the meteorological data and say,
sometimes
well, is that
they're
true?
just saying something. Like,
I know sometimes they're just saying things for like emphasis, but it is interesting just putting clickbait in perspective. And what really made us talk about this is when your friend brought it to you and like showed you the video, and then you had to explain to her what clickbait is because you were like, well, like,
yeah,
do you know what this is? And then also I think we try to not use clickbait.
I try not to. I probably have, unintentionally or, whatever, but I try not to be so explicit. Like,
yeah, I was trying to think if we've done like,
I don't know.
This is the best podcast in Japan.
Best is a hard word. I probably use best more than I should, but
maybe.
Anyway.
But it's all a matter of perspective, of course. And then it is interesting because, like I said before, like I get it that's those people's livelihoods.
Yeah.
And they have to make a
living. There's a reason why people keep using clickbait.
Yeah.
And I keep clicking it. So that's on me too.
Yeah, I don't. Well, real quickly, to wrap up the podcast, we're going to run you through. Today is February 5th.
It's a holiday. Yesterday was a holiday.
And the day before was a holiday. So February 3rd was
Setsubun.
And then the 4th was
Rishun.
Yeah.
Which is kind of like, okay, it's not kind of like, but it reminds me of Groundhog Day.
Is it the best holiday? Sorry.
Listen up. This is the best holiday.
Have you heard of Haru Matsuri?
So Groundhog Day is that an American thing? Or beyond America? It's when the groundhog...
Anyone else rustling up groundhogs and asking them what their shadows
comes out,
look like?
If he sees a shadow, he gets scared, goes back in the hole, 6 more weeks of winter.
God, 6 more months.
Can you imagine?
Ugh.
So similarly, this is about where the similarities end, but Setsubun is a seasonal division, and that's literally what that word means, but it signals the end of spring, even though right now it's like blizzarding outside.
I know. I thought it was funny that like it was the day before the first day of spring, and then the 4th was Rishun, the first day of spring, and then we had a blizzard.
So you do funny things on Setsubun, such as eating a ehōmaki, like a large, eating a large sushi roll silently, facing a certain direction that is supposed to be lucky for that year. You also, sometimes the dad in the house will dress up as the devil and the children will chase him around and throw beans at him, chanting devil out, fortune in, and then you eat the number of beans that you are old.
Yeah, so I had to eat 32 beans.
I don't think you ate all those beans, but...
Yeah, I did.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I ate 32 beans.
I didn't eat all my beans.
Oh.
I'll be unlucky.
Cursed.
So...
Ugh.
I actually got to go to a shrine on the day before yesterday, and the geisha...
an actual Setsubun day.
Yeah, and there was a bunch of different events that were happening at the shrine. There was some women that were dressed in really pretty kimonos came out and played music, and then there was a group that danced and sang, and then some taiko drummers, and then finally these actual geisha women, like fully trained in their geisha clothing, came out and danced, and that was really beautiful.
Did anything look weird about them?
What do you mean weird? So
apparently one of the traditions tied to Setsubun in some places is that people swap roles visually. And so some days on
Like
Setsubun
the
there's
man will
like,
dress as geisha?
well, sometimes there's cross-dressing, and they said another frequent one is young women dress as elderly women.
That's interesting.
So they swap, and older
No.
women dress as young women. And
These
they said
looked-
it extends to geisha sometimes.
Oh, interesting. I don't know. I think maybe that would have like switched up the mood because there was a ton of people at the shrine.
It's
and they
not
were
what the
all-
tourists are looking for.
Well, it was
They would be
mostly
shocked.
Japanese people, and they were like stoked about the geisha. Like they were like camped out there for like a couple hours because I got there really early, and I was like, oh, this is gonna be easy. Like no big deal. There's not a lot of people here. I'm gonna go get something to eat. And I came back, and it was packed. Like I couldn't even get into the shrine anymore. So I was watching from the outer gates basically. But at the very end, the geisha did throw beans into the crowd, and they chanted, and it was pretty interesting to see. And you chant Ono wa soto, fuku wa uchi. So devil on the outside, fortune inside.
Yeah, which I read in Aizu Wakamatsu, people chant something different. They
Oh.
chant essentially like blind the demon's eyes.
Oh,
So they chant like Oni no medama butsubuse.
oh, it's
If I said
intense
that right.
too.
Yeah.
So
So there's some like regional variations, and there's also something I read. Apparently, the ehōmaki, which is the sushi roll you eat, on Wikipedia, they seem to think that the name ehōmaki may be spread throughout Japan in 1989 when a Japanese convenience store chain renamed it ehōmaki and began selling it. And
that's
it
so
used to have like a
random.
different name, but
I mean, it's just like a. I think I said harumaki, which is wrong. That's a spring roll. What I meant was futomaki, like the fat sushi roll.
yeah, they said
Type
originally
thing.
it was called simply maru kaburi zushi or futomaki zushi. But then eventually people started calling it ehōmaki, and they think it was maybe like clever marketing.
Well, so I
But
guess
maybe
these
that's
are
not
all
true.
ways to kind of like ring in the spring and like welcome the warming season. But this custom began in the Muromachi period which is a really long period, but from 1336 to 1576 is the Muromachi period.
You know what else is from that period?
What?
Kotatsu.
Oh. Well, every household of the aristocracy and the samurai class would throw beans from their houses into the open air. And I guess this came from a legend in the 10th century when Emperor Uda was reigning, and a monk on Mount Kurama escaped misfortune by blinding the devil with roasted beans. So I don't know why they were throwing the beans from their houses, but
I guess they
Yeah.
think like if the oni or demon or devil could be blinded by beans, like the monk did it, then it must be good luck. So like we should throw beans too.
yeah.
It kind of makes sense. I mean, I can get behind it. We didn't throw our beans outside
Yeah, we just threw them at each other in our living room.
and then ate them off the floor.
But yeah, you can find a bunch of beans in the grocery store that are specifically like in these packages for Setsubun, and they're like roasted soybeans, so like they're
Yeah.
not dry beans that you would like break your teeth. They're beans that you could actually eat.
Yeah, and the ones that we had were roasted soybeans, but then they had like a sugar
Sugar.
coating, so they're really good.
I think they were for children.
Yeah, probably. I also read that in some areas, another regional variation is some places people use peanuts
Ooh,
instead of roasted soybeans.
that'd be good too.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, maybe I would prefer peanuts. I
But
don't know.
northeast was the fortunate direction for this year. So that's the direction we sat in. We ate our ehōmaki silently, which were only 100 yen at the convenience store.
And then put them on sale.
Yeah, they had a ton. I mean, because it was the day. And
Yeah.
so you ate yours like in half the time it took me to eat mine. So then you were just like sitting there waiting for me to finish.
Yeah,
eating
because you
mine.
said, I think one of your friends told you you're not supposed to speak.
You're not
Yeah.
supposed to
But
speak
didn't you
while
learn
you
that
eat
from one of
them.
your friends?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
then when we looked it up later, I mean, that's true. But
Oh, I just didn't
Yeah.
know.
I was
Yeah.
just surprised by how quickly you ate it, I guess.
Take
And
big
then
bites.
you just had to wait for me to be done. So, yeah, happy Setsubun, everyone.
Yeah, it was a fun day, and it's like nice to, I guess, have the idea that, spring is just right around the corner.
Yeah.
It was just really funny that then it snowed a ton today,
know.
and now they're calling for snow in like Tokyo, which apparently is pretty uncommon or not super common. So I think we're still kind of far away from springtime, which is a bummer because I'm really looking forward to it.
It's coming, though.
But yeah, it was fun doing something this year because we didn't do anything for Setsubun last year.
No.
I think we just kind of skipped it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
Got to
nice.
celebrate. Do you have a word of the week?
I do. Do you?
Yeah, I can go first.
Oh,
So, my word is tamatama, which means by chance or unexpectedly. As in, how did you find this place? Oh,
yeah, how did you
by
learn
chance.
this word?
Tamatama. So I learned this word because after my time at the shrine, when they had finished throwing the beans and everything, I was freezing because I'd been standing there for the event, and it was fun. But then I was like, okay, I gotta go find a coffee shop to like warm up or something. And I was walking around and I found one, and I went in. It was really cozy and nice. The coffee shop is named Kolere, or in katakana korere, because there's not a L or an R difference, which they were telling me means culture in Latin. But they had just changed locations, I guess, so they were new. And the owner was asking me how I found it, because I guess he's trying to kind of promote it now. And I didn't really know how to explain it. I was like, oh, I was just walking around. And somebody else that was in there was like, oh, tamatama. And I was like, oh, okay, I guess so. By chance. I looked it up later and I was like, yeah, I guess it was tamatama. I didn't tell him that I actually was looking for a different coffee shop on Google Maps. And I couldn't find it. And I walked by his and I was like, oh, well, this is serendipitous.
Was it the best coffee?
It was the best
in
coffee.
all of Kanazawa. Yeah, but then it was kind of weird, right? Because he wasn't really a coffee. Like, he sold beans, but he didn't roast. He didn't brew coffee.
He was only selling roasted beans at that point.
It was a beanery.
Yeah, but as of next week, he's gonna start selling coffee.
Oh, that's good.
Well, that's why I am thinking it's because they've relocated. Like, they were getting everything set up, so they weren't ready to do like full bartending drink stuff yet, like coffee drinks. So he like prepared a sample for me and was like, here's what these beans taste like if you want to buy some beans. And I did buy some beans and they were good. So yeah, anyway, nice. Tamatama is my word of the week. What's yours?
So this one, I could have said shabaru.
Shabaru?
Shabaru. Shovel.
Okay.
But katakana form.
Oh.
But it's yukikaki.
Yukikaki. Snow. Kaki. I don't know.
Shovel.
Oh. It's specifically a snow shovel?
When I looked it up, yeah. And I only said that because, yeah, there are people out there very diligently. Because unlike Tokyo, our poor working class people still have to go to work tomorrow, even with all the snow. So when I was walking home, there were people like desperately shoveling off, the accumulating snow.
Yeah, so it's not so bad in the morning.
Yeah, because overnight, I think it's supposed to snow a lot more.
That's what I should be doing right now, but I'm not.
Well, we also don't own yukikaki arimasen.
Yeah, we don't have one yet.
We do not have a snow shovel.
Very irresponsible of us, but oh well.
I guess, but I think most of the time for us, if it snows, we just take public transportation. We don't really need to drive.
It's very lucky of us to be able to do that.
Yeah, I can just walk to work, so I don't really have to worry about it. But
yeah, I hope you guys, wherever you are staying warm and safe. And thanks again for listening to the end this week. And if you have anything to say hi or ask us about, you can email us at ramblingramsbothams.com.
At gmail.com.
At ramblingramsbothams@gmail.com.
We are just not going to be getting the messages.
Yeah, and also, while I'm here for some blatant self-promotion, you can give us a review on
that'd be nice.
Any of our podcast platforms.
Yeah, I don't know if there's one that's better than the other, but
as long as it's a nice review.
Yeah, just be friendly. Don't be mean, please.
Well, all right, thanks for listening again, and we'll see you guys next week.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.